It's a panel discussion looking at how the Kremlin might impact Western democratic societies and political parties moving forward. The session is held in partnership with the Wilfried Martens Centre for European Studies, and it is moderated by Peter Hefele, Policy Director at the Wilfried Martens Centre for European Studies. The stage is yours.
Good afternoon and very warm welcome, ladies and gentlemen, here in the room and online on YouTube and Facebook. My name is Peter Hefele. I'm very delighted to chair this session. I'm with the Martens Centre and we are a strategic partner of the Warsaw Security Forum. The topic of our discussion is the end of populist era, and it's an ambitious topic. As ambitious as our time frame, so we will keep very closely in time, and there is a roughly 30 minutes discussion among the panelists, which I will in brief introduce later on, and then of course you are cordially invited to share your opinions of roughly 10 minutes. Well, I must admit I was tempted a bit to answer the question, the two questions to be precise, very easily by my own, because it's also my own business in Brussels. Well, the first question would be, no, there is no end of populist era. I'm definitely sure that that will continue, and well, the Kremlin either will stop its activities. So, but this is not something which you are interested in, my opinion, so to say. But I'm delighted to have way more better experts here on the panel. I'm very delighted to have three politicians very actively from Ukraine, from Germany, from Poland, and our General Ben Hodges, who lived in the US and in Germany, so spanning European and American perspectives at the same time. Well, let me begin with the two politicians, Mrs. Klympush and Mrs. Özoğuz. We in Western democracies have faced tremendous challenges and changes during the last 20 years, and there are some common developments I would say we have to share. That's the weakening of the centrist left and centrist right movements, the People's Party concept, the rise of extremists both on the left and the right side, and a revolution, for example, in communication spaces. But we have seen other threats coming from outside, and this has been a more shocking development. There had been powers, authoritarian powers, interfering in our core political processes, such as elections, corruption politicians, distorting public and virtual spaces. These methods are very sophisticated, ambitious, and very adaptable. And if it had not been so to the detriment of our societies, it would consider it great admiration. So let me get into the first question. Did the war in Ukraine change the way, or maybe other powers, not only the Kremlin, in how to interfere into the political scene in Europe? Or have we become now more resilient? Did we learn something on these permanent impacts and are more aware of the strings the Kremlin and other authoritarian forces are drawing? Ladies, what is your opinion? Maybe, Mrs. Klympush, we start with you being one of the hardest hit victims, and later on to Germany, because we have relevant cases in Germany as well. Mrs. Klympush, please.
Well, thank you, and thank you to everybody who is joining this session. Well, I think answer to your questions are both yes and no, because definitely we will not see and we are not seeing the end of the populist era at this particular moment, and unfortunately we also do not see that those governments and those forces that have been trying to impact internally on the politicians, societies, different stakeholders across Europe or across the free world, that they are going to give up on that. They will continue doing that, they will continue attacking, and they will not resist the tools that they have been using before. So they will continue buying politicians. It might be that it will cost more a little bit, because being, you know, on the side of total evil is becoming not fashionable. But at the same time, they will not give up on using those tools. And unfortunately, if we are talking about our resilience, we can say, yeah, we have become maybe we have started looking with more sobriety on some of the processes. We have been shocked in many of the communities to learn something that we Ukrainians have been saying for years and years by now, and it was just going as the water in the sand. You know, I remember how many conferences I attended and was trying to warn about those things that have been happening, that are happening, that unfortunately are continuing to happen, but that was not taken as seriously as it is being taken right now, when people are seeing the atrocities, the real face of the Russian aggression. So we are only working on our resilience. I would not be calming down in terms of being recognizing that we have already reached the resilience level, unfortunately. And I think some of the mistakes that we are making at this particular point are actually not helpful in terms of building that resilience. For example, what do I mean? And maybe that will bring us and bridge us to the German experience. Because I, for example, think that not expelling Mr. Schroeder from Social Democratic Party means a big, big mistake. And that paves the way, additionally, to to encouragement and indulgence of Kremlin to use those tools that they have been using before. Or, for example, when we are talking about how some of the states, like Hungary, are taking hostage yet another level of the sanctions package in the EU, and not coming with the harsh response to those countries by protecting values, where I think that values should actually come first. We're making another mistake. That is actually continuing our vulnerability as opposed to producing our common resilience.
Thank you very much. Well, the bridge to Germany has all been laid, and, well, Germany is in a quite awkward situation to some extent. You, as the Vice President of the German Bundestag, you had also been victim, of course, of attacks to the core of our political institution, the Parliament. So what lessons Germany has learned? What can we share in the wider European context? You know, the European Commission is also very much aware and had to set up steps to protect our political space and core political issues.
Well, I think there are a lot of lessons to be learned, as you said, and I might say, first of all, I mean, especially to you, that you're absolutely right that we didn't understand everything in the last years, and we made a lot of mistakes, and we know that. And on the other hand, I would say, or maybe I would start to answer your question with, populism will always be as long as mankind is there. The question is from who against who, and how can we maybe have more solidarity among each other. And this is why I am telling this, you know, like we have to learn our lesson. But let me tell you just one experience. I arrived last night, and this morning I attended a panel. And first of all, I heard there a sentence like, Germany is an enemy. And I was really shocked, you know. I was kind of, you know, I know this from German parliament, but I know this normally from right-wing people who transport Russian stories even into our parliament. And I wasn't really, well, prepared to hear it here. And I thought, how far is it going, you know? I was convinced when I came here that among the EU, especially with Ukraine, of course, but among EU countries, we are getting closer now, and we should be closer now. We should work according, you know, our plan really against Russia and to help Ukraine. And this is something that I saw that maybe it doesn't work in all aspects. And what we should look at is why are there still these stories, and what can we do against it? One is, for certain that we have to address the things, we have to speak about them, and just not to be, just to know about how we are acting together. On the other side, Germany has this Zeitenwende, that some people asked, of course, what does it really mean? Is it something that the chancellor said, and what are you going to do? And I think, or maybe I can tell you that this is something that even in Germany we have been discussing for several years, but it hasn't really been being done, like to have more for our defense, to do more for our defense structure, to do more for energy. And we definitely had these mistakes, for sure. But now it was Chancellor Scholz who said, we will totally change our energy policy and our structure, and there we need Europe. And I'm convinced that if we can overcome these kind of stories against each other, and if we can really rely on each other, then European countries, especially Poland, Germany and others, can play a very important role to overcome this kind of populism, and to be a good partner for Ukraine.
Well, General Hodges, you live in the US, now in Germany. You have both worlds apart, and we had an interesting discussion yesterday also on transatlantic relation in this respect, bunging the ball forth and back from the US, and we all know this polarized political situation in the US, and much of the stories go to the US, come back to Europe. Russia is perfectly playing this game. So what are your experiences in both, having lived in both societies and closely observing, of course, what's going on? What about the resilience in the US, for example, lessons to be learned from there?
Well, first of all, I don't know who that very young guy is up in the, that was several years ago. So look, for some context, in about a year from now, we are not going to be worrying about the Kremlin spending all their effort and resources trying to undermine us, because they are going to be fighting for their own survival. Ukraine is going to push Russian forces out of Crimea by next summer. I don't even think Vladimir Putin will still be in power, and we should be thinking about what comes after that. And hopefully it's somebody that we can, in fact, deal with. I'm not keeping my hopes alive for that, but it'll be a different kind of threat to us. I can't describe it. I would also say this is the last winter. We will not have to worry next winter about Russia using gas to harm us or disrupt energy supplies in Europe. They played the gas card too soon. Germany, very quickly, very well adjusted, have storage capacity. I live in Frankfurt, so I hear from my German neighbors. At first, it was like, oh my God, it's gonna be terrible. Now you hear people joke about, I'm gonna get a new Mutze, and yes, this winter will be hard, expensive, but that's it. So we have to, so the point is, we have to toughen up a little bit. I mean, we have all become quite spoiled in the United States and frankly in much of Western Europe. We've had it pretty good. So the lesson is be more resilient. I mean, kind of the way our parents were and our grandparents. They would be embarrassed to see the whining that we and our kids do today, I think, if things get a little bit uncomfortable. Now, the United States, we are very vulnerable to this kind of influence that has been coming from the Kremlin. I mean, all of you see it. I imagine as I look out there, probably at least 3/4 of you have been to the States for school or holiday or work or whatever. And democracy is not a ballet. I mean, it's more like rugby. It's hard all the time. And I hear people sometimes like, oh my God, it's unprecedented. I've never seen the United States like this. We had a civil war 160 years ago that killed almost 1 million people. So it has been a lot worse. And I would ask you to don't give up on your American friends. It'll never be perfect. And being such an open society, you are vulnerable because it's so easy for people to manipulate information. But I can still remember when I was in the 7th grade, so that would be, I would have been 11 years old, so 1969. Not exactly, the most peaceful time in American domestic history. And my teacher, Mrs. McKendry, said, "Ben, you have got to have more than one source for news." Now, this is about 100 years before iPhones and the internet and all that, okay? And she was telling me, you have to have more than one source for your news. You can't read just the local Tallahassee newspaper or Life magazine, or U.S. News and World Report was the magazine that I really depended on when I was a kid. And we had 3 TV channels. So even then, she was saying it's our responsibility in a democratic society to inform yourself. And if you just look at one thing and you get all your news from one thing, then you are so vulnerable to manipulation. And the last point I would make, of course, the attempt by the Kremlin has been about causing us to lose trust and confidence in our institutions. Right now, the Supreme Court, confidence in the Supreme Court in the United States is the lowest I have ever seen in my life, because it has become so politicized. When the former president talks about, those are my judges, those were Obama judges, I mean, that's a grossest violation of his constitutional oath I could imagine, because they're not his judges. Unfortunately, many people thought they are, and that's going to influence the U.S. elections that are happening in November. Millions of people are going to vote for a guy in the state of Georgia who was a legendary football player. He has paid for multiple abortions himself, but yet he is a pro-life advocate. And so people are going to vote for him without caring about all of these other problems and integrity, because they want one more Senate vote to try and make sure that they can pack the Supreme Court. So this is the problem for us. We're very vulnerable because people are losing confidence in the Supreme Court. When you have a president or other politicians start talking about, months before the election, I'm not so sure that we can be confident about the outcome. You can be sure that the election 2 years ago was the most closely watched, fairest, most accurate election we've had in our history, because the entire world was watching to see if there are any problems in it. So this is the effort to undermine our confidence in those sort of things is for real.
Well, I appreciate very much your optimism. I think we should put you more to the German marketplaces, because, Ms. Özoğuz, we have huge debates and fears of a cold winter and further undermining the resilience and resistance and the unity of Europeans against the Russian aggression. But Szymon, we're facing a lot of elections over the next 2 years, and your home country is among one of them. The attacking of this core political process, elections, voting, corrupting politicians, is a big issue. Do you think that the stories will be kept on, maybe changed, or are we in efforts to limit the impacts of these kind of disinformation, are we going too wide, too far, restricting the open space of debate, labeling others as pro-Russians or fascist or whatever we have heard around that, or the same goes for the left side? Do you think that we have already found the balance of limiting discussion, protecting ourselves, or did we go too far?
You know, I think it will be very difficult, to solve this situation, to heal it instantly. I think that first of all, we should really concentrate on some basic, totally fundamental things right now. And you asked the question if there is a chance that there is the end, or we are near the end of the populist era. Of course we are not. Of course we are not. We are in the middle of it, because every populism feeds on two things, two factors. First is frustration of people, and second is, I would say, inability of these mainstream political parties to address social issues, to address these frustrations. And when people see that there is no answer to the real questions, Or sometimes they are not sometimes they are not real, they are inspired by some, I don't know, trolls from the internet, trying to do a little mess here and there. But if this mainstream politics is unable to answer, they will be trying to look for the answer somewhere else. And these guys of Putin, working in the internet very hard from Minsk, from St. Petersburg, they are ready. Thousands of them. Thousands of fake troll accounts, everywhere in the internet, in Polish Twitter, probably in German Twitter as well, in Ukrainian internet. They are just everywhere. First thing we have to do right now is to stabilize the fundament again. We should stabilize the basic level, We should take the oxygen out of this process. We should suffocate them to death. I mean these trolls, these guys from this Putin stable, because they are not able to attack us from outside. They want to destroy us from inside by divisions, by creating instant divisions amongst us. So if you will ask me what is the answer and what is the healing, what is the idea, how to fix it, I would say that first of all we should know that they are doing these things with us. We should be, we should know it every time we are opening the internet, every time we are opening our mailbox, every time we are opening TV, we are turning on TV. We should be careful and we should be together, because for divisions, this is only one healing, I know. It's being together, working together. Look at the situation in Europe after Second World War. Look at Szymon and other founders of European Unions. They saw the disaster of the Second World War and they thought to themselves, okay, we don't want it to happen again, never again. What should we do then? We should cooperate, we should trade, we should make, this European community of steel and coal, and then European Union. I think we are in a very similar moment right now, after this Putin's war started in February. Right now, we should think again, what should we do together if we don't want these things to happen again. And I would say that the most important thing is to make a green transformation again. Here in Poland, we right now are facing very difficult situation because of the prices of the energy, of the electric energy, of gas, of everything. And people will be they will not feel very comfortable and very stable with it. And you will have a very wide field, to inspire from the bottom, some movements, some aggression, some divisions. And we will be probably seeing a lot of it in this coming winter. So first, green transformation. And the second thing, together, because together is much easier to do this. And the second thing, we should rethink European Union, not only because this should not only be the common trade zone, but we should think about our military potential, our defense potential. We should be ready to defend ourselves. That's great that we have this great ally in the United States. That's really great that we have NATO. But we have to ask ourselves the question, how to prepare to defend here on European continent, and how to make Ukraine member of NATO, member of European Union as soon as possible, because this is the matter of our safety, not only their safety.
Well, Mrs. Klympush, Ukraine has shown an incredible decrease of resilience, of unity, further impacts from outside, but I think, could you describe us a bit what happened in your society and maybe lessons? We talked about a lot of lessons in these events could be drawn also for Western European societies, which we consider maybe as the most vulnerable one and most affected by disinformation, by Kremlin, by Chinese forces, whatever. Maybe some short remarks and short reflections on that.
You know, I think that one of the things that will be studied after the end of this war and after our victory, with your assistance and with your help, is the resilience of the Ukrainian society and the horizontal ties that the Ukrainian people have managed to very quickly build upon. And I think that that is something that, irrespectively of working institutions, which are, I think, incredibly important for our actually resilience to populism, to all the other shaking kind of things that might happen to our democracies and so on. I think this incredible texture of the society has proven to be one of our major strengths. And I think that is something to, that will be taken away as a positive lesson learned. But you know, I wanted to a little bit just reflect on what was said. I would like to share General Hodges' optimism. And I do believe that it's in our common interest to stay united, to stay together, and it is not only about survival of Ukraine. It is definitely about our survival and our continued existence on the map of the world, but it's also about survival of the Western civilization. If you stay united, you and we all will win together. And we have to ensure that actually that gas station that pretends to be the country stops receiving this billions and billions of dollars of indulgement or euros indulgement for its energy resources, that it stops having access to any technology, real technology, that this Carthagen has to be destroyed. And I don't mean physically destroyed necessarily. I mean weakened to that point that they cannot attack in any way, not through trolls, not through economic impact, not through military means. But I think that we are not there yet, altogether, understanding. And we have not crossed the line altogether of agreeing that it's not only that Russia cannot win this war, that it is about Russia being defeated in this war. And that has to be our common goal, and we are not there yet. So I think bringing all the societies with all the understanding that it might be hard, that you're paying with money, with some uncomfort, with some, you know, maybe less heat in your homes in this winter for something that you believe in. And this is the easiest price one can pay to preserve the future, to ensure that whatever you are having and taking for granted today is there for your children and for your grandchildren tomorrow. And I think that that is also a lesson learned from us Ukrainians, because you know, we are not counting what exactly we are paying, and we are paying dearly, unfortunately, in lives and in tortures, in destruction and so on. But we know why. We know what we want to achieve, and we believe in our goal. So we want to get everybody on board, believing in the goals, in the good, in the laws, in the international law, in the order, so that we can preserve the way of life that we are, that you are still enjoying here. Thank you.
I liked very much your expression of the texture of a society, and Mr. Özoğuz, that is something which we should think about as well in rebuilding probably institutions, cohesion in our society. And Ben Hodges, I think this is an issue which is as relevant for the United States as well, to get this sense of community, of belonging together, sharing common goals as well. That is, I think, one of the most effective measures to strengthen our immune system against these threats, which will continue, definitely.
Well, our leaders have to keep reminding us, you know, what is really important. And it's a huge burden on any elected official to try to bring together everybody when they're thinking politically also. I mean, this is just the nature of it. But to find those things and reinforce those things that remind us what we care about. And what, you know, I'm appalled that we have millions of Americans that are still asking, like, why are we in Europe? Why should we support Ukraine? When this is about, not just about Ukraine, it's about democracy versus autocracy. And it's to America's interest that Europe is stable and secure, because when Europe is prosperous, America is prosperous. And then, of course, the Chinese are watching. They're waiting to see if we crack. The West, if we cannot bear up against the economic pressure from Russia, then the Chinese will not be too impressed with anything that we say about Taiwan or the South China Sea. So this is all connected, and our leaders have to kind of help make sure we do remain coherent so that we're not as vulnerable.
Mr. Özoğuz, comments on that from the German perspective? On this cohesion and increasing, maybe some comments from the German discussion, which is quite intense these days.
Well, yeah, I mean, actually, we started with it already, but of course, this is one of the most important things to just assure us and to know what we are defending. It's Ukraine, of course, but it's the way of life we have. It's our freedom. It's the values that we have. I mean, we're defending so much, and we started with populism. And how can we really fight against populism? I mean, you gave us so many examples, and EU started and NATO too to fight against it in a way, maybe let's say in a conservative way, you know, like we banned Sputnik, we banned Russia Today, but that's not the media of today, right? I mean, we have the internet, and how much do we really support those guys who, you know, just started by themselves to bring up all the fake news, to tell us what is going wrong in the internet. It wasn't really the states who really, you know, in the very beginning supported them. It was just people from the societies who did it. And it's people from our societies who are friends, who are supporting each other. I mean, just look how many Polish people host and support Ukrainians, how many Germans do it. And this is so important to see that the friendships are still there. And I think maybe one thing is also important, because I heard this, it's like, you know, when people are friends, there's nothing wrong about this. I mean, you have Ukrainians and Russians who are friends, who are families. You have like...
Where?
Excuse me?
Who were friends?
Who were, okay, yes. I think, I mean, still there are probably people very sad about, you know, like they split. I know families who split because of this war. This is so, yeah, it's a real tragedy. And we have to be clear on whose side we are. And we are clear on the side of Ukraine, and we are clearly on the side of our values. And this is something, of course, it's being also discussed in Germany. But again, I hope that as European nations, this brings us closer together, which does not mean that we don't discuss the things, you know, like mistakes and things that has been done in the past. Absolutely, we have to do that. And as you said, in 2014, when Putin talked in the Munich security conference, I just, you know, when I watched this again, I really don't know why nothing happened. I mean, almost nothing happened. You said, you know, like how dangerous this all is, and we just have to admit nothing happened. I mean, my grandmother was a Tatar from Crimea, so it was weird for me to see, you know, there's something going on, and we're just all living our normal day life, right? And of course we have to work on this, but this shouldn't hinder us to, you know, stay together, to stick together, and to not let Putin have this kind of, let's say, success that he brings us apart. You know, that he tears us apart. We have to stick together, and we have to be quite clear that whenever something like a war happens or such a tragedy happens, we are a real power all together. I mean, also with the US, of course, we always need the support of the US, no doubt, but we are a real power and we stick together, and this is something that I really want to just stress so much. You know?
Before I would like to give you the opportunity for a couple of questions. Sigmund, I see you're about to say something.
Yes, because I've heard a lot of very important things from all of you, and I know that we have a lot of things, very long list to do externally, right? We should be together. We should defeat Putin together. We should make this green transformation together. We should build up our common potential together. But I once more want to underline this inner factor, because it's very important for the resilience of every society, any society. It's very important, this integrity of the society is the crucial and fundamental thing when you are playing games with guys like Putin, who is very good at this game of making divisions. So once again, I want to tell that the one of the most important and difficult lessons to be learned by politicians right now is to show people again that unanimity in these liberal democracies we are all living in, it's the utopia. We should not avoid the differences between us. We should not avoid the conflicts between us. We should civilize the conflicts. We should learn how to discuss again. We should learn how to, make confrontations of our positions again in a civilized way. Because these guys like Putin and the other dictators, they are trying to make a sect. Every time they are trying to make a political party, the sect is the final product of it, right? And they want our nations to be sects, and they want to be leaders of their religious sects. We cannot allow them to do this. I can quote my very last sentence. I can quote, probably Yuval Noah Harari said that in any society, you see that some politician, I don't know, president, prime minister, whoever, reaches the level of 70% of support. There are only two explanations. This is a war, or this is not a liberal democracy, right? We should learn again how to be together with all our differences, and then we will be stronger. Then we will be stronger. It will be much less pressure inside this teapot. And I hope that we are very close to this moment, and I hope that we won't waste this crisis. As Churchill said, never waste a good crisis, right? So we are just a step from it, and I really want to share this hope of Ivanna and General Hodges that the next year will be, after this terrible winter, which is coming, the next year will be the spring of hope. We will experience the summer of hope, and we will experience the beginning of the complete new era in the history of Europe and the world.
Well, these issues you mentioned, this is a topic, I think, even for next year, because it raises far more fundamental challenges. But I have a gentleman here, too, and I think I have to limit it. Well, if you keep all your answers very short, then I get more. Please.
Well, Jan Farfel, European Studies Centre, University of Oxford. Thank you for all your interesting points. I would like to relate to the topic of this discussion, albeit from a different perspective, namely with the war going on in Ukraine, but also with the ongoing hybrid war going on the Polish-Belarusian border. To what extent do you think that the geopolitical considerations in the region will overshadow the democratic considerations? So from the eyes of our partners, the need for a stable regime that will be actively countering the Kremlin's influence versus the performance of the democratic society. Thank you.
I add the other comments for the sake of the time. Well, thank gentlemen, you had been first, and then the two others, please.
Thank you. My name is Jakub Knop. I'm from University of Warsaw. So I'd like to direct my question to General Hodges, and I'd like to ask about the issue of bolstering the resilience in Western societies and shaping strategic culture. And so I was wondering if measures such as conscription or creating a proper civilian defense in Western NATO countries could be, possible solutions to improve those areas. And I think that we're lucky that Finland is about to join NATO, because it could really act as an example for other Western countries on how to improve resilience of the whole society and really integrate civilians with military. So that's my question. Thank you.
Thank you. I take the other two ones. the gentleman here, please. And the lady then after, but short, please.
Hello, my name is Aydan and I'm a master's student at the University of Bologna. My question is very short. I would just like to know what do the speakers think will be the future impact, Kremlin's impact on the democratic peace theory?
Thank you.
Thank you for taking my question.
Could you repeat the last? We didn't get it here.
What will be the Kremlin's impact on the democratic peace theory?
Peace theory?
Yeah, democratic peace theory by Immanuel Kant, which is basically democratic systems don't fight with other democratic systems.
Okay.
In short.
Good. And the lady, please, and be very short, please. We are already running out of time.
Hello, my name is Maria Berlinska. My both grandfathers fought against German Nazis in World War II, and I fought against Russian Nazis since 2014. I have a very certain question. As we are talking about nukes and potential nuke strike against Ukraine, my question is, I believe that it's a responsibility of Ukrainian society in order of preparation, but it's also a responsibility of Western world as well, as we all together, as is our common values. So please, could you please tell me what certain things you can do for Ukrainians to prevent this nuke strike, the first thing, and the second one, my question is...
Sorry, could you please keep... I have to keep the time frame.
My question is very certain. You know, I risk my life every day with my friends. So where is American tanks? Where is German tanks? Where is air defense systems? Could you please tell me? Because it's, we don't need boots on the ground, but we need weapons. Could you please tell me when you will send us enough of weapons? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we have several quite diverse issues which I expected in this framework. Ben, you had been addressed more the conscription issue, the military issue. Maybe you start. The others I will raise later on.
Okay, so Sweden and Finland, I think, are the model. Estonia, very close for Europe, for rapid mobilization, but also for societal resilience. In Sweden, they have a program where children in the very early years of their education are taught how to become critical thinkers when they're watching news programs, for example. So to be critical, making that as part of education. And also, governments talk to their citizens like they are adults. Don't be scared to say, hey, we're going to have to pay more taxes in order to have more security. And yes, we're going to practice things. Talk to your citizens like they are adults, and don't be afraid to do that.
Mr. Klympush, one issue was raised about Ukraine, the next steps, fights, how we can support an issue for Germany, I think, as well.
But I'm not supposed to answer where are the tanks, right?
No, well, we leave this question rather to others.
You know what, I'll just touch on one thing. With nukes, with blackmailing, of using of the nuclear tactical weaponry against Ukraine, I think we all find ourselves in totally surreal situation. Ukraine, among the, to put it very mildly, the very few countries in the world that has given up nuclear arsenal, is being threatened with nuclear weapons. And then the whole world, including, you know, we deeply appreciate all the support that we are getting from the US, from the UK, from other nations and so on. But guys, we did have that fig leaf, which is called Budapest Memorandum. And supposedly, that should have meant something. Exactly, maybe now it's the time to reinvigorate it, because otherwise there are dire consequences for any NPT in the future, and for any possibility to ensure that we have some restraints or constraints for any state that wants to acquire nuclear power. So I think that right now we would like to see much more straightforward readiness of many nations who have the capacity to actually say very directly what they are ready to do in response, and don't be afraid to escalate. Putin and Russian Federation does not need an invitation to escalate. They are doing it every single day.
Well, I have to really cut now. It's an awkward issue for Moderator to cut these interesting discussions, because I think we have a lot of topics identified, which I would love to continue next time. This goes way beyond the issue of Ukraine. That goes into the very core and heart of our societies, for liberal, open societies. I would like to thank you, and please have a clap to all of our guests here. Thank you very much for your contributions from the audience. Thank you for the organizers, and, well, up to the next session. Thank you very much.